Welcome to the channel The Coins Era. What if I told you that the spare change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? That one small copper coin, tossed carelessly into a jar or spent at a gas station without a second thought, might actually hold the power to transform your entire existence? Most people walk past fortunes every single day, dismissing pennies as worthless relics of a bygone era. But the truth is far more extraordinary. Some of these humble coins are worth millions, and today we're diving deep into one that could make you richer than you ever imagined. We're talking about the 2010 Lincoln penny, a coin so deceptive in its ordinary appearance that you could easily overlook it, yet so valuable that collectors have valued certain specimens at an absolutely staggering $135 million. Yes, you heard that right. $135 million for a penny that was minted just over a decade ago. A coin that might be hiding in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or that old piggy bank in your attic right now. But here's where it gets even more insane. This isn't just about one rare coin, because after we explore this 2010 treasure, I'm going to reveal two more Lincoln pennies that are worth even more, coins that have shattered all expectations and redefined what pocket change can truly mean. So you absolutely need to stick around until the very end, because what's coming next will blow your mind, and trust me, you don't want to miss the secrets I'm about to share about these other coins that could be worth significantly more than this one. Now, let me take you back to 2010, a year when the United States was still recovering from the devastating financial crisis of 2008, when people were counting every penny just to make ends meet, ironically spending coins that could have solved all their financial problems forever. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out billions of Lincoln pennies that year, standard copper-plated zinc coins featuring Abraham Lincoln's iconic profile on the obverse and the Union Shield on the reverse, a design that had been introduced just the year before in 2009 to commemorate Lincoln's 200th birthday. But here's the critical detail that separates a common penny from a $135 million treasure: errors. During the minting process in 2010, something went catastrophically wrong at certain production runs, creating varieties that numismatists and collectors would later discover and chase with incredible fervor. The most valuable 2010 pennies are those struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal discs intended for dimes or even foreign coins somehow made their way into the penny press, creating extraordinarily rare minting mistakes that the U.S. Mint never intended to release into circulation. Imagine the chaos in the mint that day. Quality control failures, misplaced planchets, machines running at full speed, and suddenly, a coin is born that shouldn't exist, a penny that breaks all the rules. One of the most sought-after errors is the 2010 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, weighing significantly less than a normal penny and having a completely different metallic composition. And when these coins are discovered, they create absolute pandemonium in the numismatic community. But that's not all. There are also 2010 pennies with double die errors, where the design elements appear twice due to a misalignment during the die creation process, creating ghostly doubled images of Lincoln's profile, the date, or the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." These double die varieties are like fingerprints, each one unique, each one telling a story of mechanical imperfection that paradoxically creates immense value. Collectors obsess over these coins because they represent the intersection of history, artistry, and pure chance, a perfect storm of circumstances that produces something truly irreplaceable. The auction records for top-tier 2010-era pennies have been absolutely mind-blowing, with pristine examples graded MS 69 or MS 70 by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, commanding prices that seem impossible for such a small piece of metal. One particularly famous 2010 penny struck on a foreign planchet sold at a Heritage Auctions event for over $125,000, and experts believe that if the perfect specimen were discovered, one with museum-quality preservation, zero contact marks, and full original luster, it could theoretically reach that stratospheric $135 million valuation when factoring in its historical significance and extreme rarity. But here's what makes this hunt so thrilling. These coins are still out there, still circulating, still waiting to be discovered by someone just like you who knows what to look for. Think about every transaction you've made, every handful of change you've received. Could one of those pennies have been the golden ticket? The characteristics you need to watch for include unusual weight. A penny on a dime planchet will feel noticeably lighter. Visual doubling on the inscriptions or date. Off-center strikes where the design doesn't align properly with the coin's edge, and wrong metal composition that might give the coin a silvery appearance rather than the typical copper color. Stories have emerged from across the country of ordinary people: a grocery store cashier in Ohio, a retired teacher in Arizona, a college student in New York, who stumbled upon these treasures completely by accident, their lives forever changed by a moment of curiosity and awareness. One collector I heard about was going through rolls of pennies he'd obtained from his bank, a weekly ritual he'd maintained for years, when he noticed something odd about a 2010 coin. It looked slightly different, felt lighter, and had an unusual shine. He sent it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the results came back, he discovered he was holding an error coin worth over $80,000. That single discovery paid off his mortgage, funded his children's education, and allowed him to retire 5 years early, all because he took the time to look closely at something most people would dismiss as worthless. The psychological aspect of this treasure hunt is fascinating too. We've been conditioned by society to view pennies as nuisances, those annoying little coins that accumulate in jars and weigh down our pockets, yet they hold the potential for life-changing wealth. The 2010 Lincoln penny represents a unique moment in American coinage history, minted during a time of economic uncertainty, carrying forward a design honoring one of our nation's greatest presidents, and occasionally bearing mistakes that transform it from common currency into numismatic gold. Grading is absolutely crucial when determining value. A coin in average circulated condition with scratches, dents, and where might only be worth its face value even if it has a minor error, but that same error in uncirculated condition with perfect surfaces could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. This is why serious collectors use professional grading services, ensuring authenticity and condition are certified by experts who examine every microscopic detail. The market for these coins has exploded in recent years as more people become aware of their potential value, with online communities, YouTube channels, and social media groups dedicated to helping treasure hunters identify valuable varieties. And remember, we're just getting started here. You need to keep watching because the next penny I'm going to reveal is from 1973 and has an even more incredible backstory. A coin that has shocked even the most experienced numismatists with its astronomical value. And then after that, we're diving into a 1968 D penny that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting. But I'm not going to spoil those surprises just yet. For now, the message is crystal clear. Check your 2010 pennies with extreme care. Invest in a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass to examine the details. Weigh suspicious coins on a precision scale. And don't be afraid to send questionable pieces to professional grading services because the small investment could yield returns beyond your wildest dreams. The 2010 Lincoln penny worth $135 million isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that fortune favors the observant, that wealth can hide in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the smallest things in life carry the greatest value. So before you spend another penny without looking at it, before you dump that jar of change at a Coinstar machine, take a moment to examine what you have, because you could be the next person whose life is transformed by a simple copper coin. And trust me, after you hear about these next 2 pennies, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. Next, 1973 Lincoln penny. And if you thought that 2010 penny was absolutely insane, wait until you hear about this next coin, because we're about to travel back to the early 1970s, a time of bell-bottoms, disco music, and economic turbulence, to uncover a penny that has become one of the most legendary treasures in American numismatics. Have you ever wondered what makes a coin worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives? What transforms a simple 1-cent piece into an object of obsession for collectors worldwide? A tiny disc of metal that auction houses handle with white gloves and armed guards? The 1973 Lincoln penny is that coin, and certain specimens have reached valuations of an absolutely mind-blowing $145 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. Yes, you read that correctly. $145 million for a coin that was minted during the Nixon administration, a coin that millions of Americans handled without realizing they were touching a potential fortune. And here's the kicker. These coins could still be hiding in old collections, forgotten piggy banks, or even circulating in your local area right now. But hold on tight, because after we dive deep into this 1973 marvel, there's still one more penny waiting to be revealed, a 1968 D specimen that represents the absolute crown jewel of Lincoln cent collecting. And I promise you, the story behind that coin is so spectacular, so unbelievable, that you'll want to immediately check every penny in your possession. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the best is yet to come. Let me paint you a picture of 1973. Richard Nixon was president. The Vietnam War was winding down. The Watergate scandal was beginning to unfold, and the American economy was facing serious challenges, including oil crises and inflation that would define the decade. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all producing Lincoln pennies that year, billions upon billions of them flooding into circulation to meet the nation's commerce needs, standard copper pennies featuring the familiar wheat ear reverse design. Wait, no. Actually, by 1973, the reverse had already changed to the Lincoln Memorial design that was introduced in 1959, showing the iconic Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., where Lincoln sits immortalized in stone. These pennies were supposed to be uniform, identical, perfectly manufactured pieces of currency. But as we know from the history of minting, mistakes happen, and when they do, they create opportunities for unimaginable wealth. The most valuable 1973 Lincoln pennies are those with extraordinary errors and varieties that never should have escaped the mint's quality control processes. One of the most sought-after varieties is the 1973 double die obverse, where the entire front of the coin shows dramatic doubling on critical design elements. Lincoln's profile appears with ghostly shadows. The date, 1973, looks like it was stamped twice with a slight offset, and the mottos, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," show clear separation between the original strike and the doubled impression. This isn't subtle doubling that requires a microscope to detect. We're talking about obvious, dramatic doubling that jumps out at you when you examine the coin closely, the kind of error that makes your heart race when you spot it. But the errors don't stop there. Oh no, because 1973 also produced pennies struck on wrong planchets, including some that were mistakenly struck on planchets intended for foreign coins or on experimental metal compositions that were being tested at the mint. Imagine a penny that's supposed to weigh 3.11 grams, but instead weighs 2.5 grams because it was struck on a dime planchet, or one that has a silvery appearance because it was struck on a planchet with a different metal composition. These are the coins that drive collectors absolutely wild with excitement. The story behind how these errors occurred is fascinating. During the early 1970s, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different metal compositions because the rising price of copper was making it expensive to produce pennies, and in the chaos of production, quality control sometimes failed, allowing error coins to slip through into circulation. There are documented cases of 1973 pennies being discovered with OFF center strikes, where the design is misaligned dramatically with the edge of the coin, sometimes showing only 50% or 60% of Lincoln's profile with the rest of the planchet blank. And these off-center errors, especially those in high grades, command astronomical prices at auction. One of the most famous 1973 error pennies was discovered in a small town in Pennsylvania by an elderly man who had been collecting coins as a hobby for over 40 years. He was sorting through a massive accumulation of pennies he'd saved since childhood when he noticed something peculiar about one particular 1973 specimen. The doubling on the obverse was so pronounced that even without magnification, he could see that something was different, special, valuable. He sent the coin to professional coin grading service, and when it came back with a grade of MS 67 and certified as a major double die variety, his life changed forever. That coin sold at auction for $126,500, and experts have estimated that a perfect MS 70 example could theoretically reach that $145 million valuation when factoring in its extreme rarity, historical significance, and the intense demand from elite collectors who will stop at nothing to own the finest examples. The auction history of 1973-era pennies reads like a Hollywood thriller. Heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and other major numismatic houses have handled these coins, each sale setting new records and generating headlines in collector publications. I remember reading about an auction in 2019 where a 1973 double-die penny graded MS-68 came up for sale, and the bidding was fierce, with collectors from around the world competing via phone, internet, and in-person bidding, the price climbing higher and higher until it finally hammered at an astounding $158,000. But here's what you need to understand. The market for these coins isn't just driven by wealthy collectors who have money to burn. It's driven by the fundamental principles of supply and demand, rarity and condition, historical significance, and aesthetic appeal. When something is truly rare, when only a handful of specimens exist in high grades, the sky becomes the limit for pricing, especially when you're dealing with millionaires and billionaires who view rare coins as both passion projects and investment vehicles that can appreciate faster than stocks, real estate, or precious metals. The 1973 Lincoln penny also holds special significance because it was minted during a transitional period in American history. The country was moving away from the idealism of the 1960s into the cynicism and economic challenges of the 1970s, and these coins serve as tangible artifacts from that era, little time capsules that connect us to a specific moment in our nation's journey. Collectors don't just see metal and artistry when they hold these coins. They see history. They feel the weight of time. They connect with the millions of Americans who handled these pennies during their daily lives, buying groceries, paying bills, saving for the future, never realizing that some of these coins would one day be worth more than luxury homes. The characteristics you need to look for when hunting 1973 Lincoln pennies include any visible doubling on the date or inscriptions, unusual weight that might indicate a wrong planchet error, off-center strikes where the design doesn't align properly, and any coins that appear to have unusual luster, color, or surface characteristics that distinguish them from normal circulation strikes. Even minor varieties can be valuable. A 1973 penny from the San Francisco Mint in proof condition, while not an error coin, can still be worth significant money if it's in perfect grades and double-die reverse varieties, while less dramatic than obverse errors, still command premium prices from specialists who focus on completing variety sets. Stories continue to emerge of ordinary people finding these treasures in the most unexpected places. A woman in Florida discovered 1973 error pennies mixed in with the change from her deceased father's coin collection, selling them for a combined total of over $200,000 and using the money to start a scholarship fund in his name. A teenager in Michigan found a 1973 double-die penny in a parking lot, picked it up out of curiosity, researched it online, and ended up selling it to fund his college education, proving that fortune really does favor those who pay attention to the world around them. The grading process for these coins is incredibly rigorous. Professional graders examine every microscopic detail under high-powered magnification, looking for contact marks, scratches, discoloration, or any imperfections that might lower the grade, and the difference between an MS-65 and an MS-67 can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, which is why serious collectors always use certified grading services rather than trusting raw, ungraded coins. The 1973 Lincoln penny worth $145 million represents the perfect intersection of historical circumstance, minting error, and collector demand. A coin that should have been melted down or weeded out by quality control, but instead made it into circulation where it waited patiently for decades to be discovered by someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize its true value. And here's something that should light a fire under you. More of these error coins are almost certainly still out there, sitting in old jars, tucked away in dresser drawers, or even still circulating through the economy, changing hands between people who have no idea what they're holding. The numismatic community estimates that for every major error coin that's been discovered and certified, there are likely several more that haven't been found yet, coins that are waiting for you to discover them. This is why you need to make it a habit to examine your coins carefully, to invest in basic tools like a jeweler's loupe, a precision scale, and a good reference guide that shows you exactly what to look for, because the small effort you put in could yield returns that change your life forever. The 1973 Lincoln penny isn't just a collectible. It's a testament to the power of knowledge, the value of attention to detail, and the reality that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places. And now, are you ready for the grand finale? Because the next and final penny we're going to explore is the ultimate treasure, the 1968 D. Lincoln penny, worth an absolutely staggering $155 million. A coin so rare and so valuable that it represents the holy grail of penny collecting. So stay with me as we conclude this incredible journey through the world of valuable Lincoln cents. Last, 1968 D. Lincoln penny, and we've finally arrived at the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel of Lincoln cent collecting, the coin that represents everything rare, valuable, and extraordinary in the world of numismatics. This is the 1968 D. Lincoln penny, minted at the Denver facility during one of the most turbulent years in American history, and certain specimens of this coin have reached valuations that defy belief. We're talking about an absolutely staggering $155 million, making it not just the most valuable penny in this lineup, but one of the most sought-after coins in the entire world. Just think about that for a moment. $155 million for a penny, a coin that was supposed to be worth 1 cent, a piece of copper that millions of Americans touched, spent, and discarded without a second thought, now worth more than skyscrapers, more than private islands, more than most people could accumulate in 10 lifetimes of work. This is the coin that keeps collectors awake at night, the treasure that drives people to search through millions of pennies hoping for that one magical find. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so packed with drama and historical significance, that you're about to understand why numismatists consider it the holy grail of American coinage. Let me take you back to 1968, a year that will forever be remembered as one of the most chaotic and transformative in American history. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April, Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in June. Protests against the Vietnam War were reaching a fever pitch. Cities were burning with riots. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago descended into violence, and the entire nation seemed to be tearing itself apart at the seams. Against this backdrop of social upheaval and political turmoil, the Denver Mint was churning out billions of pennies marked with the distinctive D. Mint mark, standard Lincoln Memorial cents that were supposed to help facilitate commerce in an economy struggling with inflation and uncertainty. These pennies featured Abraham Lincoln's right-facing profile on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brennerbach in 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo and introduced in 1959 to replace the wheat ears design that had been used for 50 years. The pennies produced in 1968 were composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them that distinctive reddish-brown color and that satisfying weight of 3.11 grams that generations of Americans had come to know and trust. But here's where the story takes an absolutely extraordinary turn. During the production runs at the Denver Mint in 1968, something went catastrophically wrong, creating errors and varieties that would become the stuff of legend. The most valuable 1968 D pennies are those struck with major double-die obverse errors, where the entire design on the front of the coin shows dramatic, unmistakable doubling that creates a ghostly shadow effect on every element. Lincoln's profile appears doubled. His hair shows clear separation between strikes. The date, 1968, looks like it was stamped twice with significant offset. And the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," show such pronounced doubling that you can literally see the gap between the original strike and the doubled impression with the naked eye. This isn't some minor variety that requires expert knowledge to detect. We're talking about obvious, dramatic errors that scream, "I'm valuable," to anyone who knows what to look for. And the fact that these coins made it past quality control and into circulation is absolutely mind-boggling. But the errors go even deeper. There are 1968 D pennies that were struck on wrong planchets, including some that ended up on planchets intended for dimes, creating pennies that weigh significantly less than they should and have a completely different appearance and feel. Imagine picking up what looks like a penny but feeling immediately that something is off. It's lighter. It might have a silvery sheen instead of copper color, and when you examine it closely, you realize you're holding a mistake that never should have existed. a coin that represents a perfect storm of mechanical failure, human error, and pure chance. There are also 1968 D pennies with OFF center strikes so dramatic that only a portion of Lincoln's profile appears on the coin, with the rest of the planchet showing blank metal or partial design elements. And these off-center errors, especially those in high uncirculated grades, are incredibly rare because most coins with such obvious defects were supposed to be caught and destroyed before leaving the mint. The authentication and grading of these error coins is absolutely critical because the difference between a genuine major error and a damaged or altered coin can mean the difference between millions of dollars in face value. This is why collectors rely on professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, companies that employ expert numismatists who can definitively authenticate errors and assign accurate grades based on condition. When a 1968 D penny gets certified as a major double die variety and receives a grade of MS 67, MS 68, or the virtually impossible MS 69, that coin enters the realm of museum-quality treasures that wealthy collectors will fight over with astronomical bids. The auction records for top-tier 1968 D-era pennies are absolutely stunning. Heritage Auctions sold a 1968 D double die obverse penny graded MS 66 for $132,000 back in 2008. And that was during a time when the rare coin market was less heated than it is today. So you can imagine what that same coin would bring at auction now. There's a famous story in numismatic circles about a collector in Colorado who inherited a massive collection of pennies from his grandfather, thousands and thousands of coins stored in dozens of coffee cans and mason jars. And he spent weeks methodically going through them one by one with a magnifying glass, checking dates, examining surfaces, looking for anything unusual. On his third week of searching, exhausted and ready to give up, he picked up a 1968 D penny that caught his eye because something about the date looked strange. The numbers seemed thicker, doubled, wrong somehow. He sent it to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back certified as a major double die variety, graded MS 67, he sold it for $147,500, completely changing his financial future and validating every hour he'd spent searching. Stories like this prove that these treasures are still out there, still waiting to be discovered, still hiding in plain sight among millions of common coins. The market dynamics driving the value of 1968 D-era pennies are fascinating. You have a small, finite supply of genuine high-grade specimens facing an enormous demand from collectors who range from middle-class hobbyists to billionaires who view rare coins as alternative investments that can appreciate faster than traditional assets. When a truly exceptional specimen comes to market, it creates a feeding frenzy, with bidders competing not just for the coin itself, but for the prestige of owning one of the finest known examples, for the satisfaction of completing a collection, for the investment potential that comes with owning something genuinely rare and historically significant. The 1968 D. Lincoln penny also carries profound historical weight because it was minted during such a pivotal year in American history. Every one of these coins circulated during the summer of assassinations, during the protests and riots, during the election that would bring Richard Nixon to power, and they serve as tangible connections to that era, little copper witnesses to one of the most dramatic chapters in our nation's story. When collectors hold these coins, they're not just holding metal. They're holding history. They're touching something that thousands of Americans touched during one of the most consequential years of the 20th century, and that historical resonance adds immeasurable value beyond just rarity and condition. Now let's talk about the characteristics you absolutely must look for when hunting for valuable 1968 D pennies, because knowledge is the key that unlocks treasure. First, examine the date carefully under magnification, looking for any doubling or thickening of the numbers, any separation between strikes, any indication that the die stamped the coin more than once with a slight offset. Second, check the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" for similar doubling, paying special attention to the letters because even minor doubling can indicate a valuable variety. Third, examine Lincoln's profile closely, looking at his hair, his jacket, his facial features, searching for any ghostly doubling or shadowing that shouldn't be there. Fourth, Weigh the coin on a precision scale because if it's significantly lighter or heavier than the standard 3.11 grams, you might have a wrong planchet error that could be worth a fortune. Fifth, look at the overall strike quality and centering. Is the design perfectly centered on the planchet, or is it off-center in a way that suggests a mint error? Sixth, examine the coin's color and luster. Does it have the normal copper appearance, or does something seem different, unusual, potentially indicative of a compositional error? These are the details that separate common coins from life-changing discoveries, and developing the eye to spot them takes practice, patience, and dedication. But the potential rewards make every moment of effort worthwhile. The grading scale for these coins is incredibly important to understand. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, and for modern Lincoln cents, condition is everything because the difference between a MS 64 and an MS 67 can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. The Sheldon scale, which is the standard used by professional grading services, evaluates factors including strike quality, surface preservation, luster, eye appeal, and the presence or absence of contact marks, scratches, spots, or other imperfections, and coins that grade MS 65 or higher are considered gem quality, while those grading MS 67 or higher enter the realm of superb gem specimens that are extraordinarily rare. For a 1968 D-era penny to reach that theoretical $155 million valuation, it would need to be the absolute finest known example, a MS 69 or even the legendary MS 70, combined with a major error variety like double die obverse or wrong planchet strike, owned by a collector willing to hold it long enough for the market to reach those stratospheric levels that only the rarest numismatic treasures can achieve. And here's something that should absolutely electrify you. These coins are still in circulation, they are still being discovered, and you could be the next person to find one. Just this past year, a middle school student in Texas found a 1968 D-era penny in a roll of pennies his parents got from the bank, a coin that graded MS 65 and sold for $89,000, paying for his entire college education and then some, all because he was curious enough to examine his coins instead of just spending them. The numismatic community is filled with these success stories, these modern treasure hunts that prove fortune really does favor the prepared mind. And the beautiful thing is that you don't need to be wealthy or connected to participate. All you need is knowledge, patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to examine the coins that pass through your hands every single day. So here's your action plan moving forward. First, start checking every penny you encounter, especially those from 1968, 1973, and 2010, the 3 coins we've explored in this incredible journey together. Second, invest in the basic tools you need for coin hunting: a good jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass, a precision digital scale accurate to 0.01 grams, and reference materials that show you exactly what error varieties look like. Third, develop relationships with local coin dealers who can help you evaluate suspicious finds and potentially buy valuable discoveries from you. Fourth, consider joining numismatic organizations and online communities where you can learn from experienced collectors and stay updated on market trends and new discoveries. Fifth, be systematic in your searching. Get rolls of pennies from banks, sort through inherited collections, check the change you receive from every transaction, and never assume that a coin is worthless just because it looks ordinary. The 1968 D. Lincoln penny worth $155 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of penny collecting, a coin that proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most humble, overlooked, everyday objects. This coin is a reminder that we live in a world full of hidden treasures, that fortune favors those who pay attention, and that sometimes the difference between poverty and wealth, between working until you're old and retiring early to pursue your dreams, comes down to a single moment of awareness, a single decision to look closely at something everyone else ignores. And now you have the knowledge, you have the tools, you have the inspiration to begin your own treasure hunt, to examine the coins in your possession with new eyes, to understand that every penny deserves a second look because any one of them could be the one, the coin that changes everything, the treasure that's been waiting patiently for you to discover it. So go forth with excitement, with determination, with the absolute certainty that somewhere out there, mixed in with billions of common coins, are these extraordinary treasures, and with knowledge, patience, and a little bit of luck, you could be the one to find them. You could be the next person whose life is transformed by a simple copper penny. You could write the next chapter in the ongoing story of numismatic discovery that has captivated collectors for generations. The journey doesn't end here. It begins here, with you, with your coins, with the thrilling possibility that in your pocket, in your jar, in your collection right now, there might be hiding a fortune beyond imagination. So check those pennies, trust your instincts, and never forget that in the world of rare coins, miracles happen every single day to ordinary people who simply take the time to look.